Atlantic provinces are bubbling up. Those living in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland and Labrador will be able to travel freely within one another's provinces while maintaining public health guidelines starting Friday, July 3rd. Other Canadian visitors will be allowed to visit provided they self-isolate for 14 days. Joining me now to discuss the move is Nova Scotia Premier Stephen McNeil. Premier, first of all, good to see you. Hope you and the family are well. What prompted this bubble experiment? Who initiated it?
Well, this has been an ongoing conversation inside of the region. The Atlantic Premiers talk regularly. We have great conversations. Each of us wanted to ensure that we were able to control the virus in our own provinces. And following the epidemiology, this was the next step to being able to open that up and have some mobility inside of the region. And then in a few weeks, we'll look at the epidemiology of the rest of Canada and look at whether or not we open up to the rest of Canada.
Okay, so how is it going to be enforced? How does this work? Let's say I'm in Newfoundland or St. John's and I want to go, I don't know, to Halifax. Can I just go? No problem. But what if I decide to go visit somebody in Nova Scotia? Who checks me out?
So when you come in, if you come into our airport, you'll be greeted by what we call an information picket, where they inform you that coming in from Ontario that you would need to self-isolate for 14 days. If you came across our land border, the same thing would happen. And if you came in from one of the Atlantic provinces, your ID would identify where you're from, what province, and you'd be advised you're free to go and do as you wish inside of our region.
How doesn't this violate Section 6 of the Charter? That guarantees mobility rights. You and I both know there's a case before Newfoundland and Labrador Supreme Court on this. And just to remind people, Section 6 of the Charter says every citizen of Canada has the right to enter and remain and leave Canada. And every person, every Canadian citizen has the right to move and to take up residence in any province. So doesn't this violate mobility rights that are guaranteed to all Canadians?
We've never locked down our province. You're welcome. We just said if you come in for 14 days, you have to self-isolate the length of this virus. This pandemic, public health orders, our own emergency order reflects that if you're coming from a part of the country or globe where we haven't lifted the order, that you need to self-isolate. So we welcome you, as we have others, through this entire pandemic. Our province has never been closed. We've clearly said to citizens who are coming in, including Nova Scotians, by the way, who were away, whether they were down south or outside the country, you need to go home and self-isolate for 14 days. But you're welcome. There's beautiful cottages, scenery in this province that I'm sure a lot of Canadians would enjoy a rest, come and play, and realize they can actually stay and work from here.
But it is unequal. If someone visits New Brunswick from Nova Scotia, they don't have to self-isolate. But if I drive across the border from another province outside the Maritimes or Quebec, all of a sudden I have to isolate. That's unfair. And mobility rights, I understand that there's some issues on. Believe me, I appreciate what everybody's going through. But you know, your hospitals are not at capacity. I just wonder if you're concerned about a charter challenge here.
Not at all. As I said, our province is open. You need to self-isolate for 14 days. I know Canadians who want to come home, want to come to Nova Scotia. If they're not from Atlantic Canada, will recognize that 14 days of self-isolation is a small step to help protect their loved ones if they're coming to visit. And we're working towards following the epidemiology, and it's certainly my hope that in the second week or third week of July that we will be opened up to all Canadians. But we've taken a measured approach internally with our own province. As we open up our economy, we'll do the same thing with the Atlantic bubble. We'll follow the epidemiology, and then we'll open up to Canadians. Certainly encouraged by what we're seeing in Ontario and Quebec, where the numbers are coming down. Those are all positive signs. So, this virus is humbling, and we're going to treat this virus humbly. Otherwise, as I've said many times, this virus will humble us, and we want to make sure that when we open up, we can stay open.
Premier, just before I let you go, I never want to forget about the massacre that happened there, the largest gun massacre in Canadian history. I know there's going to be potentially a class action suit by some of the victims' families, and I appreciate that. A report in Maclean's magazine alleges there might be some connection between the RCMP and the shooter. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Not at all, no. First I heard it was on Red and Maclean, but I don't have any knowledge of that at all. listen, there's lots of questions that are wanting to be asked. The appropriate review will take place with the national government and our province and all the agencies associated with to provide the answers for Canadians, but more importantly for me to provide answers to those families who lost a loved one on that day.
Premier, I always appreciate having you on the show, sir. Take good care, and thanks for informing us about the Atlantic bubble. Appreciate it.
Take care. Look forward to seeing you soon.